there has just been a huge twist in the David case, and it kind of goes against everything we thought we knew. So an anonymous LAPD source spoke to NBC4 and revealed that David has now been identified as a suspect in relation to the death of 15-year-old Celeste Rivas. But that's just one day after TMZ reported the complete opposite. They said that police weren't close to making an arrest in this case. But it gets even crazier, because according to the same source, the 20-year-old singer is reportedly not cooperating with this investigation, despite his PR team saying otherwise the entire time. Not only were Celeste's dismembered remains found in the trunk of his impounded Tesla back in September, but now investigators suspect that more than one person was likely involved in the disposal of her body. And reports also now claim that partly the reason why an arrest hasn't been made yet is because they're still trying to determine her cause of death. They don't even know if this was a homicide yet. But if that LAPD source is true, then it is not looking good for David. But of course, I'll keep you guys updated as we know more. A new study has found that raccoons are showing early signs of domestication. Dogs, you may have competition. Now, the study conducted at the University of Arkansas suggests that raccoons living in urban areas in North America are physically changing in response to life around humans. Now, the researchers suggested that domestication starts when wild animals start hanging around humans and adapt on their own, rather than us domesticating them. Dogs hung around ancient garbage piles and cats showed up for the mice that followed. But in this process over hundreds of years, physical changes were also observed: shorter snouts, smaller heads, floppy ears, and white patches of fur. This pattern, which is noted all the way back in the 1800s, is called the domestication syndrome. And raccoons in the Big 25 and before GTA 6 might have that syndrome. Of the 20,000 raccoons observed across the US, researchers discovered that the ones living in the city have shorter snouts than the ones living in rural areas. Bro, what even is this year? Massive news for the unemployed gamers. GameStop have just announced their first ever trade-in anything day, where you don't need money, you simply need to trade in any personal belongings and they will give you back store credit. How does this not end in catastrophe? Now, the company has always had a trade-in system for old games and consoles, but on the 6th of December, if it can fit into a box of this size, they'll take anything. Or maybe not quite everything, because there's a couple of very specific items that they won't take, including ammos, weapons, dead or alive animals. However, taxidermied animals are okay. Drugs, sexual and explicit items, hazardous waste. I think you get the point. Now, what GameStop is going to be doing with all of these random items, or how they will value these items, is completely unknown. North Korea just got the biggest serving of karma. So they just played Japan in the Under-17s World Cup, but before the game even started, instead of shaking the Japanese players' hands, they started doing whatever the hell this is. And against Japan of all teams, this is especially wild because this is a culture that values respect so much that at every World Cup, they leave the changing rooms spotless. In fact, in 2022, they even made origami swans and a thank you note written in Arabic and Japanese. But you'll be glad to hear that North Korea's intimidation tactics didn't work, because in the end, Japan won on penalties and they have now qualified for the quarterfinals. And can't wait to hear what Kimmy has to say about this. Did the US just accidentally invade Mexico? Well, videos are circulating online today showing a group of Navy soldiers having to remove a sign declaring a Mexican beach Department of Defense property. Now, the sign also read that this was now a restricted area by the authority of the commander, and that anyone entering may be detained and searched. But turns out, though, it wasn't just one sign, it was 6, and they were placed there on accident. Only after it was investigated by the heavily armed Mexican Navy, the Pentagon admitted that contractors hired by the DoD were instructed to place these signs on the Texas side of the border. But, quote, changes in the water depth and the typography alter the perception of the international boundaries location. My personal favorite part of the statement: Government of Mexico personnel removed 6 signs based on their perception of the international boundaries location. And to make it even more spicy, the US's accidental invasion of Mexico happened on the same day that Donald Trump said that he would be okay with bombing drug cartels in the country. The Mexican government has now begun an investigation into the matter. South Africa has just declared a national disaster. Today, thousands of people across the country took to the streets as part of an organized national shutdown against gender-based violence. And now it is getting global attention. You see, in South Africa, gender-based violence has been an emergency for years, not just now that the government has officially recognized it as one. I mean, just listen to the numbers: 5,500 women and 1,000 1,600 children were murdered in just 1 year in South Africa. And several studies, including those from the United Nations, indicate that their femicide rate, which is murder that exclusively targets women and girls because of their gender, is 5 to 6 times higher than the global average. However, despite this, most people, especially in other countries, are completely unaware of this, until a movement was started by everyday South Africans, which not only took the country by storm, but is now getting global coverage recognition. You see, the key issue is that South Africans for years have been relentlessly trying to get gender-based violence recognized as a national disaster. But all previous efforts have been continuously denied or ignored by the government. But now, because of how big this recent movement became, even reaching the point where they had a petition with over 1.1 million signatures, the country's leaders finally flipped. And today, gender-based violence was officially classified as a nationwide disaster. Now, of course, some argue that Ramaphosa just did this for show and it won't actually change anything, but others say that awareness is the first step for change. But what do you guys think? Will the country see a difference because of this? Or not. Miss Universe 2025 will go down as their most controversial year in history. So the winner was just revealed to be Mexico's Fatima Bosch, the same girl who was called a dumbhead by the pageant's director, triggering mass walkouts by contestants and a huge global backlash. But that was just a tiny fraction of the problems that they've run into this year. After that incident, a former winner of the contest was criticized for making racist comments online towards the pageant's director, calling him that despicable Chinese. And then when someone in the chat corrected her, saying that he was actually Thai, Alicia Machado said, "Chinese, Thai, Korean, to me, all of these people with slanted eyes like this are Chinese." This is while she was pulling the corners of her eyes. Miss Israel got a wave of death threats online after a clip of her went viral, seemingly giving Miss Palestine crazy side-eye. She then had to come out and deny these claims, saying that the footage was cropped and taken from a distorted angle, and that she did not look at Miss Palestine with any hostility. Miss Jamaica was placed on a stretcher and rushed to hospital after she fell off the stage during one of the walks. And then just days before the winner was set to be announced, 2 judges abruptly stepped down from the competition, with one of them accusing the pageant of being rigged. In fact, the president of the Miss Universe organization was even asked by reporters about these rigging allegations while he was literally standing next to the winner. Now, he strongly denied all of the accusations. But in the end, Thailand was runner-up, with Venezuela, Philippines, and the Ivory Coast also making it into the top 5. The question is, do you think that the right person won or not?